have to do our weekly check-in with Mock Draft Watch. This is 7.0, which is presented by Ticketmaster. Mock Draft Watch and Buffalo Bills draft coverage presented by Ticketmaster. Check out the latest Mock Draft Watch by heading over to buffalobills.com, where 7.0 is alive and well. And here to help us navigate our way through that is our colleague Maddy Glab, who has had her ear to the ground on this since 1.0. So any headlines this time around, Maddy? Because we're kind of caught in the middle, right, between the drafts that you're tracking, pre-Diggs trade, post-Diggs trade here, kind of sandwiched around it since it happened right in the middle of the week.
Yeah, most definitely. If we look back to Mock Draft Watch 6.0, we started tracking that end of March, and so we're into April 5th today, and a few mock drafts reflect the post-Diggs trade, and as you would guess, not much has changed because the Bills have been getting mocked wide receivers left and right since I started tracking these mock drafts at the end of January. That remains the same. I'm still seeing a lot of the same names pop up. Adonai Mitchell has been a huge favorite heading to Buffalo with the 28th overall pick. He's almost up there right now with Brian Thomas Jr. If you look back at all of the mock drafts and track who's getting mocked to the Bills the most, the two favorites right now are Adonai Mitchell and Brian Thomas Jr. As of late, Adonai Mitchell has been the favorite heading to the Bills at 28. I would assume we are going to see some mock drafts next week that have the Bills trading up to go get a wide receiver.
Right.
Is that Brian Thomas Jr.? Is that Rome Odunze? Is that Malik Nabers? I'm not sure. We saw Joe Buscaglia release a mock draft from The Athletic today, and he had the Bills heading up to the 7th spot, trading with the Titans, trading away a few picks from this year as well as their first next year. Their first this year, their second this year. I believe it was their fourth this year, in addition to their first next year, to go get Malik Nabers at number 7. So I would guess we may see a few more mock drafts that look like that just because with the departure of Stefon Diggs, you're not just needing to fill an X wide receiver role anymore. You're also having to fill the spot of your former number 1 wide receiver who did lots and lots and lots of incredible productive things when he was here with the Buffalo Bills. I mean, 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons, helping the Bills get to 4 straight AFC East titles. That is going to be very hard to replace in the first year of whatever this iteration is going to look like for the Buffalo Bills. You got to ask the question, what will this offense look like in 2024? Is Joe Brady going to have a new vision for how they fill the role of Stefon Diggs? Could it be with a player that the Bills get in a trade? Could it be with a player the Bills get in free agency that's still out there? Could it be in the draft? Or could it be with volume of wide receivers that are already on this roster? We're not exactly sure yet.
Yeah, and one of the things about these mock drafts, A.D. Mitchell steps up as being the forerunner now, really because Brian Thomas Jr., you feel like he's going to get taken earlier, right? Because Brian Thomas Jr. has started to move into that upper echelon of those top 3, Malik Nabers, Marvin Harrison Jr. and the like, and Brian Thomas Jr. is almost there, so you never feel like he's going to get to 28, which is why A.D. Mitchell all of a sudden becomes the Bills' go-to guy, or the one that's getting mocked to the Bills so often. You think that's right?
Yeah, I would say that's right. You see Brian Thomas Jr. heading off the board in several mock drafts before the Bills are even at their pick, whether it's a few spots before 28, whether it's in the teens. That's kind of the range where I see him heading off of the board in a lot of mock drafts that we've been looking at. Another new favorite name, I don't want to say favorite, but another name that I've seen pop up a few times, wide receiver, Xavier Worthy and McConkey, I've seen twice over the last 2 weeks being mocked to the Bills at number 28. Those are two other interesting names for the Bills if they decide to stay put at 28. So I want to talk about those guys. Should we get into a couple of wide receivers here?
We can do
it.
it.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's go with Xavier Worthy first. He's the other wide receiver out of Texas. We've talked about Adonai Mitchell quite a bit already. So Xavier Worthy, 5'11", 165, a junior. He ran a 4.2, 140 at the combine, if you guys remember. He broke the record set by John Ross. He started in 39 games over his career at Texas. He also has time as a punt returner. This could be looked at as a plus if you're looking for somebody to fill the hole of Deontay Hardy. He had over 1,000 receiving yards in 2023, along with 12 touchdowns in 2021. If you look at his career, almost 200 receptions, 2,700 receiving yards, 26 touchdowns. He averaged 70.6 receiving yards per game during his time at Texas. He ranks 4th all-time in Texas football history in career receiving yards. He had a reception in 39 consecutive games. That's the 3rd longest streak in UT history. That says he is a consistent receiver. He was first team All Big 12 in 2023, 2nd team All-America honors as a punt returner as well. And when you turn on the tape on this guy, he is a cheetah. Once he gets going, good luck trying to catch up with this receiver. I think he's pretty good at tracking the ball with the speed that he possesses. He can make adjustments to catch a ball in stride. He's a field stretcher, and he's somebody that's going to require the attention of a defense, which could open things up for other players. He's got a decent catch radius. The knock on this guy is his size. He's got a skinny frame. Is he going to be able to be that contested catch guy at the next level with having a 5'11", 165 frame? I'm not sure. I think if speed is really important to your team and you're looking for somebody who can possess that and you don't mind having a skinnier frame, then this is your receiver. What do you guys think about the traits that Xavier Worthy possesses?
I think he's got all you need except an extra 20 pounds. 20 pounds might get him to the edge of being durable enough. It really is a concern. At 165 pounds, most of the big guys on the field could do one-arm curls with 165 pounds. He's tough. He can be tough and all that. And that's the durability is the one thing that really worries you. And other than that, I like everything about him. He catches the ball well enough, runs good routes, drops his hips, gets in and out of breaks, tracks the ball well on deep routes. But it's a real thing. Size is a real thing. And durability is a real thing. And I don't know that you can quantify it any other way other than just to look and say, man, 39 games is a lot of games, and he does not have an injury history. So there's that. And some guys, that size is never a problem. They just somehow stay healthy. But they're rare. They're rare. And sooner or later, it seems to catch up with you.
Yeah, I would say that a lot of people might point to Tank Dell last year in the draft and say, hey, there's a little guy. But to me, they're two different players. I think Tank Dell is an outstanding route runner and is a separator, where Worthy is a field stretcher, which, Maddy described already. And to me, they're two different guys, both small. And Tank Dell, yes, it was a freak injury, but he snapped his leg in half, and the Houston Texans didn't have him for the playoffs. 17 games in the NFL is different than playing 12 games in college because you're dealing with the biggest and the best. And at the end of the day, it is a big man's game. So I think it is a concern. From what I'm hearing, there is a mixed bag of opinions on him. Some people really like him for obvious reasons, and some people are a little concerned based on some of the stuff that Steve and I are discussing. It's interesting, too, that his touchdown total went down every single season. He went from 12 to 9 to 5. Maybe that's because A.D. Mitchell gets added to the roster last year. Maybe that's a part of it.
Right.
But that's something that prompts you to look at the tape a little bit more. I think the thing that I like is he can make plays outside and inside. More often on the inside, he won and was open because he would work off the back of clear-out routes and just run off somebody's rear end and get open that way. He's too slight framed to be a tackle breaker. The only time I saw him break tackles after the catch was when he would spin off an arm tackle. A defender's out of position because he's so fast, he can get an arm on him. He can roll out of those for extra yardage. But if someone's got him wrapped, he's going down.
Right.
Because he's only 165. I mean, let's not forget, Isaiah McKenzie was 165 pounds. I mean, this guy's a little taller, but it's a very, very light player.
The thing about light guys is, and it's been universally true even back in the days when I played, smaller guys don't break tackles. Bigger guys can pull them down, get a handful of jersey and pull them to the ground. You don't have to really wrap up and kind of, nobody is like gathering themselves to tackle the guy. They just run in there and grab him and get him down. So they're susceptible to getting tackled at a higher rate because of the fact that, nobody is not wrapping them up. They're not afraid of getting hurt tackling the guy. So they're going in there with some aggression. So they get tackled at a higher rate, plus their strength and slight in a frame means they can't withstand the collision or the violence of it as well either. So all of that, for all those reasons, light guys like this struggle to break tackles. And that's another part and parcel of why, the concerns of him have less to do with his skill set than they do his actual size.
Well, let's add 20 pounds here and an inch, and we get a wide receiver called Ladd McConkey out of Georgia. And this is a wide receiver who has been mocked to the Bills post Stephon Diggs trade, so he has popped up once since Stephon Diggs was traded. An interesting wide receiver. I like what he offers. Last season, he had just under 500 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, average 15.9 yards per catch. But in his career, he goes over 100 receiving yards, over 1,600 receiving yards, over 100 receptions, 14 touchdowns. He played in 39 games in his 3 seasons with Georgia. He ran a 4.39 40. His back injury and ankle injury that he had last season allowed him to only play in 9 games, and so that's why you may see 500 receiving yards for 2023, just under that number. He played in big games in Georgia, which you love getting a receiver who played in a Power 5 conference, especially in the SEC where you're playing against really, really good defenses. He has experience as a punt returner as well. If you watch the tape on him, he is a shifty, quick receiver who's a good route runner. He can trick defenders with his quick and soft feet. The speed definitely shows up on tape on him. He's dynamic in the way that he plays the position. He knows how to find creases and get open. It just looks easy to him, and I think this is something that's going to go with him into the NFL. I feel like he's going to be the type of receiver who can get open and who you can trust with the ball. When you watch him, you just get a sense of the fact that this player understands the game with how he plays the wide receiver role. I think he's going to make whatever team he goes to better. He can line up in multiple positions, but I believe his home is as a slot receiver. Another question for him, size and play strength. 6 feet, that's okay. 186, is that a little too light? Do you like him at that spot? He holds up in what I've seen on tape in Georgia. But then you think about the next level, you think about the NFL, you think about guys pressing him. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's playing in the best conference in terms of physical defenders, in terms of comparison and projection to the NFL. I think what's going to hurt him a little bit is I think there are going to be some teams that see him as a slot only and nothing more. And then there are going to be other people that like him more that say, you know what, he won outside enough. I mean, he wins on outbreaking routes pretty consistently. And there are going to be some people that feel like he can play inside or outside, and they'll obviously have him higher on their board. And all it takes is one team. So I'll just say this. If you're talking about just these 2 guys, Worthy and McConkey, I take McConkey 10 times out of 10.
For sure.
I will always take the separator over the speedster. 10 times out of 10, 100 times out of 100. So if you're pitting these 2 guys against one another, I take McConkey every single time. I think the only other thing that hurts him a little bit is his catch radius is not big. You've got a lot of big, tall targets in this draft class, which is why I think he's going to be down the board a little bit. Not terribly. He could sneak into the bottom of the first round if somebody likes him. But just not having that large catch radius hurt him. I think what helped him was his combine workout. I mean, the fact that he clocks a 4.39 and goes 36 inches on the vertical leap, I think it showed some explosiveness that I think some people weren't convinced that he had.
Right.
You know, and then he had a good week at the Senior Bowl as well. So I think he put it all together in the pre-draft process, and that's why I think he could creep into the bottom of round 1.
Yeah, I agree with both those things. It doesn't bother me maybe that he's got a similar skill set to Khalil Shakir. separators are always going to have a place to play. And that's what he is. And I think maybe you could say as a downside, or maybe it's an upside, I agree with you. I think he can contribute to whoever drafts him this year. He's going to get on the field, and he's going to contribute. He may be the same guy in 3 years that he is today. I don't know that he can go any further. I think he is, as his potential is.
Limited ceiling.
Yeah, he's got a limited ceiling, but he's pretty good right now.
Yeah.
He can
High
get
floor.
open. I think he gets open. And I think that's really key. So I'm with you. I like him better than Worthy because of his ability to find a spot and get open. Plus, guys like this who run really good routes come across as being really intelligent football players. And the more smart guys you have on your team, the higher above expectations you can perform. And I think that's what McConkey is. He exceeds expectations at every turn, and I think that's why he's an intriguing prospect. And I think, yeah, if he's there, if it's between those two, Worthy and McConkey, I'd take McConkey too. And if they're both there, they may both be there at 28 if they don't trade up.
Yeah, I think Glad McConkey offers more as a wide receiver in terms of what he's giving you with being able to play in multiple positions. Xavier Worthy can also do that, but I just think he's a more well-rounded receiver at this point in his career, in his football career, heading into the NFL. And if you look at number 28 and you think about what wide receivers could be available, do those wide receivers give you a wide receiver one potential? Compared to the guys at the top of the draft who we've been talking about as well in Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, and Malik Nabers. And I think the answer is there could be potential there, but I don't think it's as much of a guarantee as if you were up at the top of the draft being able to select one of those top three guys.
Yeah,
You look back at round one in years, and some of those guys hanging out at the bottom of the first round or the second round or third round, you never know what a player is going to turn into once you attach that player to a coaching staff. Look at Stephon Diggs, fifth-round wide receiver. Look at what he turned into. I think that capability is out there for several players, but you never truly know what you're getting. You can see it on tape. You can scout it. You can have meetings with these guys. You can get them at the combine. You can host them on a 30 visit, but sometimes players don't turn out how you wanted them to. I think if you were able to move up into the top of the first round, I think that percentage goes up, and your belief in a guy being able to be a difference maker in his first season, that's what I'm talking about, rather than hanging out at number 28. How does the coaching staff feel about doing something like that? Are they looking for somebody in the draft to be a huge difference maker in the first season or not? I think these are definitely a few questions, several questions that the coaching staff and the scouting department are talking about right now as they look at the roster for the 2024 season, right?
And I think that changed when they traded Steph Diggs. I think now it's like, yeah, we need somebody to come in. We need, and I'll say this too about McConkey. I see him more as a guy that can go outside to the wide side of the field, outside a slot, and also to the boundary as an X, and anywhere in there. Motion, slot receiver, wing back. He has played in a lot of different spots and seemed to be productive in all of them. I don't have a problem with him. He seems versatile, and that lends itself also, once again, to his intelligence as a football player. But I think his versatility sets him apart from a guy like Worthy, and some of the other guys further down the list.
Yeah, I mean, I might put Brian Thomas Jr. in
with those
ready
three.
to be a number one.
Absolutely.
Right away. Maybe not week one, but maybe by week 6 or 7. He's more accustomed to filling that role, provided he's swift on the uptake with the scheme. I think A.D. Mitchell's a guy that it might take a year. Could he be a number one in 2025? Yeah, but in 2024, you're maybe not as certain. So, and that's why they kind of get slotted where they do.
Any of these guys could surprise you as well. I mean, they come out and say, "Wow, look at this! We didn't know." But you can't count on being. You don't count on being surprised. You're surprised when you're right. You don't expect them to surprise you. Any of these guys could turn out to be a guy as good as Steph Diggs has been, because they're all athletically right there in Steph's wheelhouse, because Steph was a 5th rounder. So all of these guys, depending on what's between their ears and their motivation, all the intangibles could elevate when they get to the next level. But the higher you get to the draft, the more you rely on measurables. When you get to the very top of the draft, it's not only the measurables, but it's also the intangibles meshed with the measurables. These guys come off as being leaders, professionals at a young age, old souls. These guys that are mature emotionally on and off the field, who've got a sense about them as a human being that goes beyond the sidelines of a football field and beyond the weight room and beyond all that stuff. That's what these teams kind of see in these very elite guys coming out of the draft. And once you get off of those guys, then the differences become almost, as an evaluator, you almost exaggerate the differences in so order to differentiate. And I think sometimes in those exaggerations, you kind of go too far. And maybe there's not that much difference between them. But that's why it's an art rather than a science.
Well, let's talk about one of those guys who's hanging up at the top of round 1. And if the Bills do choose to go find their wide receiver 1 in the NFL draft, maybe this is somebody that's worth drafting, worth sending a lot of picks from this year, maybe next year, to whatever team to go up and get that guy. His name is Malik Nabers out of LSU. He's 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, is a junior coming out of LSU. He's a consensus All-America honors receiver, first team All-SEC in 2023. He was the Citrus Bowl MVP in 2023. He played in 38 games, started in 30. He had 2 1,000-yard receiving seasons. In his career, he had 189 receptions, over 3,000 receiving yards, 21 touchdowns, averaged 15.9 yards per reception, and averaged 79 receiving yards per game. Guys, if you look at his season last year, he was a productive wide receiver, over 1,500 receiving yards, averaged 120 receiving yards per game last season, which is a huge number, along with 14 receiving touchdowns. And when you watch this player on film, he is scary with the ball in his hands. You can line him up anywhere, and he will win the one-on-ones. He's an explosive deep threat. He can shake defenders and get separation. He makes playing the position just look easy. He looks like he's playing at a different level of ball than his defenders are playing, and he can make catches in traffic. He plays strong. He's great at tracking the ball. He can make mid-air adjustments to catch a ball, and he has the ability to get yak yards, which I think is really important in this offense. We've heard this coaching staff and the offensive coaches harp on how important yak yards is, and he is a yak receiver. He has that wide receiver 1 potential.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any debate about that. Certainly tested well as expected, with super explosive numbers. We know the Bills felt they needed more explosive type plays in their offense to shorten drives, put points on the board faster, and this guy would check all those boxes, as far as that requirement's concerned. I would just say what I found interesting was he and Brian Thomas Jr. are so talented that they didn't really have to dive into deep scheme with that offense, because those guys could just flat out win against just about anybody. And so scheming them open, doing all that other stuff, it wasn't really necessary because these guys were just so gifted. It was easy for them. I mean, you said it looked like they were playing another sport because they are that much more gifted than a lot of other people. And we're talking about players in the SEC here, which should not be dismissed. The thing I like best is are the double moves. He double moves people, and some of them have fallen down, some of them have turned and looked like corkscrews. He really sets people up, sets DBs up well, and then he's wide open for the throw. That's not going to happen in the NFL, but size, speed, catchability, I mean, he's the full total package, which is why he's going to be a top 10 pick.
Yeah, and you're going to have to jump very high to get Malik Nabers on your team. But he is a guy that is going to come in and contribute right away. He's going to be a tough matchup for teams. Now, certainly playing with Brian Thomas Jr. and the quarterback they had there as well. I mean, he had some dudes around him, no question about it. But he made the most of some opportunities. He's got great athleticism, catches the ball well. And I think I like about him, and this is part of what I was talking about in the last segment, is that, I like guys who don't shy away from it. I mean, throw them the ball in any situation, they're gonna compete. and they're going to feel like they're the guy. That's big, particularly at this level, because when you get up there and you're at the top of the game and you're playing in a playoff game or a Monday night game, a primetime game, a lot of guys, all they can think about is the fact that they finally made it to a game like that. Neighbors and guys like him realize that this is where they belong, and they rise to it. It's a special quality. So, and he seems to have it. I have never met the guy, but his body language, his play style, everything lends itself to him being an elite wideout, and that's why that's why we're talking about him.
All right, Maddie, thanks for the latest updates on Mock Draft Watch 7.0. We'll wait for 8.0 next week.
3 more coming
Let's
before the
go.
NFL draft, guys.
3
Get ready.
weeks away. It's
Buckle
pretty
up.
crazy.